how does this apply to being an operator? So really, if you own a small business, this is probably the only thing I'd like you to remember today, is your business will most likely fail or run its course. When this happens, it'll typically be worth a fraction of the value of your inventory if you have any inventory. And if you don't, like, you're probably not going to, it's not going to be worth anything. And you're probably going to have some debt that you're going to still have to pay off, and it'll be your debt and not your business's. So the exception to this is if you own some or all of the real estate you operate in. So when you start to attach real estate to your business, you now have a tangible asset that you can leverage as an exit strategy. And it gives you a little something at the end of the day. And the 21 Main Street building in Asbury, our commercial building that we bought in 2016, I looked at that as my retirement, or at least a little nest egg for myself and my family. And at that point, I knew that no matter what happened in my business, I now owned a piece of very valuable real estate in one of the area's hottest markets. And everything else just suddenly became a lot less scary when I knew I had a little bit of a safety net. And at this point, I've been bitten by the real estate investing bug, and I've started out on a different path. But my initial goal was really just to acquire that to have an exit strategy. So things can go south in a business, and they often do, but figuring out a way to own some of your business, like where your business operates and your business is home, is probably one of the greatest things anybody can do for their business. So here's a couple resources, mainly just books that I like that have influenced my thinking. First is Unreasonable Hospitality. That should be required reading for any entrepreneur. I've read it twice, and I'll probably be revisiting it in the next couple of months too, once I dig out from my current reading pile. That's how highly regard that I consider that book. Another one, I read this probably 20 years ago, Losing My Virginity by Richard Branson. He was the one that gave me the green light to channel my entrepreneurial ADHD into a million different things. Really, with Richard Branson, I learned, he came from a music background, so I identified a lot, especially at that point when I was full-fledged, had two music businesses. But what I really liked was how he tried to approach like the marketing side of stuff as just creating buzz, creating like memorable experiences, and really just like doing things that, like, I like wine, I'm going to start Virgin Wines. I like flying, I'm going to start Virgin Egg. And just really challenging himself into getting into spaces that I think most people would think are insane. So it really proves the point. If you put your head down and learn something, it doesn't really matter what it is if you're a smart person. And the same things, the same principles apply no matter what the business is once you understand the top level differences. So another book, and I probably have not read this book in at least 2 decades, Our Band Could Be Your Life. This is not a business book. I knew Michael Azerrad was the guy who wrote the first, I think, Nirvana biography back in the day after Kurt Cobain killed himself. And so when this book came out, I was super interested. Really, the takeaway here is how the early punk hardcore communities were formed. Most cases, there was a couple. You have Black Flag and the bands coming out of Southern California. I had like Husker Du up in Minneapolis. You had East Coast Minor Threat and like later Fugazi coming out of DC. And really, it might have been a couple dozen people in a scene. And really, these bands, once they started to tour, would plug into these remote nodes in different parts of the country. And they were able to really build something bigger than any one of these individual scenes. And now it became like a fundamental movement of music at a very crucial time in American like rock history. And it all came out of a bunch of like little scenes that all just banded together into something bigger and supported each other. So I try and take that approach with anything I do as far as it pertains to entrepreneurship. So last book is Creative Act by Rick Rubin. Rick Rubin was a producer of Run DMC, Beastie Boys, Slayer. Later on, Johnny Cash and Joe Strummer. And really, again, he was another music entrepreneur that I identified with early on. And his process of approaching creativity and a lot of his theses are just really insightful. And in this book, it's probably like that thick. You'll read it in like probably like a day.